Nolan's only plan that afternoon was to feed his kids and soak up the sun. But when two sheriff's deputies walked up demanding his ID during a cookout, they had no clue they were confronting an FBI agent trained in civil rights. Crestwood Meadows wasn't upscale, just a stretch of green along a slow bend of the Ashley River, a place where families came to let their stress drift away. It was the sort of spot where folding chairs outnumbered picnic tables and the scent of charcoal told you'd found the heart of the gathering. That's where the Dandridge family could be found every other Saturday without fail. Nolan Dandridge stood at the grill in a plain white tee and basketball shorts, carefully turning a rack of ribs with a pair of metal tongs. He wasn't the kind of man who needed to show off, his skill with marinade spoke for itself. "Don't let those dry out," Tiana called from the folding table as she pulled the foil from a tray of sweet corn, her gold hoop earrings catching the afternoon light. "You always try to do too much at once." Nolan smirked without glancing up. "Woman, when have I ever ruined ribs?" Their daughter, Kendra, rolled her eyes and pulled her curls into a ponytail while keeping an eye on her younger brother. Jalen hurled a frisbee toward a far-off tree, missing badly. He squealed anyway, sprinting after it with both arms stretched like a goalie. "You two better eat today," Tiana warned, pointing a serving spoon at the kids. "I didn't peel all these potatoes so you could live on juice pouches." Kendra dropped into a lawn chair and slid her earbuds in. "You're the one who cooks enough for 20 people." Tiana smiled, brushing the comment away. "I cook for my family like I love them. You all eat like I don't." Nolan chuckled as he flipped the ribs again. The grill hissed and popped. Everything about the afternoon moved in a slow, easy rhythm. No one was rushing. Just a typical South Carolina summer, heat pressing down like a warm hand, children's laughter drifting across the grass. Other families were scattered through the park. A group of cousins tossing a football. A couple grilling hot dogs near the swings. A few older folks slapping dominoes under the pavilion's shade. No one was rowdy. No one was causing trouble. "Jalen," Nolan called out, his voice carrying on the breeze, "stay where I can see you." "I'm just grabbing my frisbee," the boy shouted, voice cracking with excitement. "Don't go past the trees, you hear?" Nolan added. Okay, Jalen waved back. Kendra shot her dad an annoyed look. "You treat him like he's 5. 7's close enough," Nolan replied. There was comfort in the routine they'd built: grill, laugh, eat, clean up, head home. No deadlines, no buzzing phones, no interruptions. Tiana pulled a mason jar of lemonade from the cooler and handed Nolan a cup. "Don't let that fire die. You know how long these ribs take." He took the drink, tapped his cup to hers. "This ain't my first time." "I know. That's why I married you," she teased, popping a deviled egg into her mouth. Nolan shook his head with a grin. "Woman's been roasting me since '03. That was their kind of family, not perfect, but real." They laughed big, argued loud, and loved even louder. Nolan had spent the past year buried in work, long days at the Charleston field office, late nights typing reports at his laptop. That's why these weekends were sacred. He glanced toward the tree line where Jalen came running back, frisbee in hand, breathless and beaming. Behind him, a squirrel darted up a trunk and vanished. "Look, I caught it!" Jalen shouted, holding the disc high like a trophy. "You didn't catch it, you picked it up," Kendra mumbled without looking up from her phone. "Still got it," he said proudly, collapsing into the grass. Nolan leaned back, cracked his knuckles, and looked at Tiana. "You hear that? Our boy's a champion." "He'd better be," she replied. "He eats like one." They both laughed, a sound that only comes from peace, from knowing you're exactly where you're meant to be. But minutes later, a low rumble from the parking lot broke the calm. Tires crunched over gravel, then rolled onto the grass. Too close for any car to be. Nolan looked up. Whose drive? Looks like more than just a family thing, the older deputy remarked. Tiana stood up instinctively, resting a hand on Kendra's shoulder. It's just us and the kids. No music, no loudspeakers, no crowd. We're here every other weekend. Ma'am, I wasn't talking to you, the older one replied flatly. Kendra immediately pulled out her earbuds, eyes on her mother. Jalen froze mid-bite into his hot dog. Nolan didn't show a reaction, at least not on his face. He'd sat through enough interrogations to read the intent in someone's tone. He stayed composed, steady. Like I said, Nolan repeated, this isn't some public event. Just a family meal. Got ID on you? The younger deputy asked. Nolan blinked. For what reason? We need to verify who we're speaking to. For a barbecue? Nolan asked, his voice even. The deputy didn't reply, only stared. You're aware you're not legally required to show ID unless you're being detained or suspected of a crime, right? Nolan said, calm but firm. The older deputy narrowed his eyes behind his sunglasses. You trying to get smart with us? I'm just answering your question, Nolan replied evenly. Tiana's grip on Kendra's shoulder tightened. Her daughter hadn't moved a muscle. The air seemed to shift, heavier, tighter. The younger deputy stepped around Nolan, leaning toward the folding table and peering under the foil lids. What's in here? Food. Tiana shot back, stepping forward. That's my potato salad. Please don't touch it. I'm not touching anything, ma'am, just looking. He turned slightly, pressing the button on his shoulder radio. Unit 7, run a plate check. Black SUV, South Carolina tag, 6 Tango 29. Nolan's SUV. Tiana glanced at him, the exchange brief but full of meaning. He gave the smallest nod. He understood exactly what was happening. Are we in trouble? Kendra whispered. No, baby, Nolan said softly. We're fine. But his stance had changed, feet planted a little wider, hands in clear sight. Not raised, not hidden, just visible. Let me ask you again, the older deputy said. Show me some ID. Nolan drew in a slow breath through his nose. What's your reasonable suspicion here? The man stepped closer, just shy of invading personal space. You're obstructing. No, sir, Nolan replied evenly. I'm standing still, speaking clearly. I haven't moved, I haven't touched anything, and I've answered your questions. That's not obstruction. The deputy's jaw tightened. In the mirrored lenses of his sunglasses, Nolan's reflection stood, arms loose at his sides, brow drawn, not angry, just prepared. Kendra stood now too, her chest tight, fingers trembling. Mom, she whispered, can they make us leave? Tiana stayed silent. The younger deputy returned to his partner. Plates come back to a Nolan Dandridge, Mount Pleasant address. That's me, Nolan said. You sure about that? The older one asked, tapping the name into his tablet. Got anything to prove it? Nolan exhaled slowly. Just a little, he said, reaching for his wallet. With deliberate, measured movements, he pulled out his identification, not just a driver's license, but a federal badge and credentials. The older deputy blinked, took them, read them, then looked at Nolan again. Say that slower. Supervisory Special Agent, Nolan said clearly. Internal Affairs Bureau. The air went still. Heavy silence stretched. The younger deputy glanced at the badge, then at his partner. You serious? Nolan didn't respond. Tiana folded her arms, her face set like stone. She didn't speak, but her eyes said enough. The two deputies exchanged a look. Didn't realize, the older one muttered. You didn't ask, Nolan replied. Just doing our jobs, the younger deputy added. I've heard that line before, Nolan said quietly. Usually when someone gets hurt. They lingered a moment longer, then gave stiff nods and turned back toward their cruiser. No more questions, no citations. Just the sound of tires crunching over gravel. It was more than enough to set off something bigger. The living room was warm in the late evening light, blinds half drawn, tension settling like a layer of dust. Nolan sat on the couch across from Amber Price, one leg crossed over the other, hands resting calmly in his lap. A camera recorded, its red light blinking, while Tiana stood just outside the frame with her arms folded. Kendra filmed the scene on her phone, quiet and intent. Amber leaned forward. Mr. Dandridge, your video has been viewed over 300,000 times since this morning. Can you share what happened from your point of view? Nolan paused, not because he needed to think, but to weigh his words. Every sentence could be clipped, replayed, and shared again. We were having lunch. Me, my wife, my kids. That's all, he said. We weren't causing a disturbance. We weren't breaking any laws. But two deputies still decided we were worth stopping. And you told them you were an FBI agent? Yes. Do you believe that changed how they treated you? No, Nolan replied. I believe it changed how they stopped treating me. Amber tilted her head. Explain that. Nolan leaned forward slightly. If I didn't have that badge, they'd have kept pressing. Maybe tried to search the car. Maybe told us to leave. Maybe worse. But the badge forced them to second-guess the version of events they were trying to create about us. Amber sat back. Do you think this was racially motivated? Nolan's eyes flicked toward Tiana, then locked on the camera. I don't think it, he said. I know it. Silence followed. The only sound was the low hum of the